And we are back with another Just Joking podcast. I'm one half of the podcast king over here, and I got my main man, Joe. Joe, checking in on this Wednesday, brother.
What's good, man?
Man, what's not good is this weather, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Walk outside, it looks like England right now. Have you ever been to England?
No, I have not had the pleasure. No.
I mean, you know what, man? I'm going to tell you something right now. Gorgeous country, gorgeous people. I wouldn't call the food gorgeous or great there at all.
I've heard.
It is like the definition of unseasoned chicken in England. And hey, England people, I'm sorry, don't come for your boy, but it is what it is, and y'all know.
Yeah.
Y'all know.
Yeah. When you use vinegar as seasoning, I mean.
Hey man, we're gonna just jump right into it. We came out of our previous episode and we talked about some really real stuff. And since our previous episode, there's been some cases of Vogue that's had some updates.
Yeah.
Some not really recent incidents that's happened, but recent to the masses, if you will. And then just something that's happened just a couple of days ago, man, and it's made me really wonder what's going on out here. Yeah. And this is not just a new thought for me, but what I'm talking about is a lot of the police incidents and things that's been going on right now.
Yeah.
But before we get into them, let me ask you, I know in our first or second episode, you talked about an incident that you had when you were young.
Yeah.
And kind of how that went down. Since then, have you had any other interactions, good or bad, with our men and women in blue?
No. And see, it's kind of a loaded question because I've been pulled over a couple of times for speeding. I'm not gonna lie, that's probably my biggest vice is I speed occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
But the people who are getting pulled over, are they getting pulled over because they're speeding, or are they getting pulled over for whatever reason they're getting pulled over for?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've had no experiences, but I'm also very white looking. So I'm not saying that every cop pulls over a black person because they're black. I'm saying that in these scenarios we're talking about, was that the factor? Because they have reasons, they claim there's reasons, and then we come back after the fact and we find out those reasons aren't the right ones. So
now I'm going to try and include our picture because we haven't quite gotten to video yet.
Yeah.
But I want to include our picture just so that the listeners and the people that are consuming this content have an idea of who we are. Myself, I am a 36-year-old African-American male. I have fairly brown skin and a whole lot of facial hair. Now, how would you describe yourself to people that are listening or watching our YouTube channel?
I mean, I kind of look like most veterans look, but I am very light-skinned, white, essentially. If somebody didn't know me, they would just assume I was.
Mm-hmm.
I have, dark black hair, but it's a lot of gray these days. But I got a long beard, which could be off-putting to some people, I suppose.
Yeah.
But
now, I have not, in my police interactions, I haven't had a negative incident to date on the very few times that I have been involved with the police. That does not mean, though.
That doesn't mean it doesn't happen to other people.
That it doesn't happen to other people. And it also doesn't mean that I'm not scared. Scared. I will go on record and say scared every single time that I get pulled over. Whether it was for something that I knew I did. Like, I've been pulled over for speeding.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn it. I didn't see him right there. He got me. I know exactly why, he or she is pulling me over. Versus sometimes where, it's frustrating because it can be disruptive if you didn't know why you got pulled over and you've got the cops, flashing their lights, which has happened one time. And shortly after I moved here, I got pulled over and I was doing Uber.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why am I getting pulled over right now? Like, I knew I was under the speed limit. I knew I used my signals, all that jazz.
So what happened in that one?
Turns out, and he had a valid reason for pulling me over.
Okay.
Here in Maryland, you have to get your cars inspected every 2 years.
Okay.
My inspection was overdue for my car. Now, I had just gotten it, but just because you just buy a car, depending on how you purchased the car, that doesn't mean that it's valid from 2 years from when you got it.
So, but how did he know you didn't have an inspection?
They have the automatic thing that scans your plates, I guess, and I drove, past this cop car. Yeah, like if you look at some of them, they got those two little cameras on the back. Yeah. They just scan as you're driving.
Interesting. That's new to me.
So I passed this guy. I saw him flip, and I'm like, he ain't coming back for me. I'm good. Yeah, I turned. He turned, pulls me over. This was at nighttime.
Yeah.
Now, because of things that's
getting pulled over at night, though, that shit's scary in general.
And because of things that's happened out there in the world, let me tell you what King does, what I do.
Yeah.
Because I am aware that it is nighttime. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I have no idea why he pulled me over. I have my lights turned on.
The inside lights.
On the inside of the car.
Yeah.
I have my my car registration on the dashboard. Now my insurance is on my phone.
Yeah.
And then my windows already rolled down and my hands are just sitting on the wheel at 10 and 2.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when they come, and it's sad that I have to think like this, but when you roll up, King wanted to be as least threatening as possible.
Yeah. That's crazy, right?
Because I don't know what's going on. And it sucks that I have to feel that way. I don't have the luxury of being like, why the hell you pulled me over? Like I've seen some people do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And but that, incident, came up. The cop was extremely polite. There was no disrespect whatsoever from him.
Yeah.
Because I'm big on that too. If I feel slighted, I don't care what your title is.
No respect anymore.
I am sometimes compelled to speak the fuck up when I see disrespect happening. Depending on who's around, what's going on, I give the person like if it's somebody else that I'm sitting over here, it's like it's not for me. That person has to decide how much disrespect they're gonna take. But I said that to say, like, I've been lucky in that I haven't had an interaction where I've seen disrespect from a cop, because I am certain, and people that know me, I think, could probably attest to this as well, that I wouldn't just shut up. Like I wouldn't be the guy that, let me, yes, sir, so I can get my way out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, no, get out of here alive. But at the same time, I feel like you have to be aware and take those things like almost kind of the approach of don't give somebody a reason.
Isn't that crazy?
Right?
Like the dichotomy there where, for example, for me, when I get pulled over, I get anxiety. Like, but it's not anything even remotely the same as what you deal with.
Yes.
Like my anxiety is just like, oh, fuck, I got pulled over. How bad is my ticket going to be? It doesn't cross my mind that I could get shot. Like, isn't that nuts? Like, that's unfair. That is a lot to carry as a person. And, it's ironic because there's people out there who don't agree with any of this, who think, oh, that's bullshit. But if you had a kid who got picked on their whole life or was getting picked on by a group of kids, wouldn't you want to help them or defend them or protect them or tell them that that's not fair, that's not right? But because these people who are telling you they're feeling this way has a different color skin than you might not agree with them, or it's their fault in some inherent way. Like I just don't get it. Like, I just don't get it. Now,
we have a couple of cases that we said that we want to talk about, but I did want to bring up one other incident that happened with me that made me go, wow.
Yeah.
So myself and 3 other veterans were the face of this veterans charity drive, basically. and a lot of money got raised for this event. Now, the people that invited us to be the veteran faces said, "Hey, free food, free drinks. Just show up in front of these people, be yourselves." And it was for a phenomenal cause. And the organization that set this up and the people that donated, hats off to them, man. A lot of money was raised that night for a really good cause, in my opinion. Now, on our way back, one of the veterans said, "Hey, I need you to pull over right now." And I said, "Like right now, right now?" He goes, "Right now." And this is probably around midnight in Maryland on the highway. And he goes, "I gotta go. Like, go." And I'm like, dude, you can't wait till we get to a gas station?" And he says no. So I'm like, all right. I don't know how he's going to finish, but we'll cross that path later.
When we get there, yeah.
So I drew the short end of the stick alcohol-wise because it was 4 people. We went like 45 minutes away to this location. Yeah. So, and we had to, I think we had to be at work the next day.
Yeah, probably.
So we literally drew sticks to see who was going to, be the designated driver, basically. And we had the bartender actually put sticks and put some red lipstick on one of them and then hold it in their hand so that it was fair. It wasn't manipulated in any way, because if you get veterans the opportunity to cheat, to manipulate something, we just might.
They're going to do
it. So I drew the short end, whatever. We're driving home, stop and get pulled over. I'm in the driver's seat now. While this guy's over on the side of the highway leaning against a tree doing his business.
Just to be clear, he's taking his shit.
He's doing number 2.
So
he's doing number 2. So while the one veteran's doing that, the other 2 guys are drunk.
Yeah.
And the poster of the most interesting man somehow made its way from the event that we was at to inside of our car. That's a funny tidbit that I wanted to say on purpose, because next thing I know, there's lights flashing behind us. Now, right before that, both of the other guys who had been drinking as well went out to take a piss like next to the side of the car, and then got back in, and they're passed out. So when the lights flashed, my initial thought was, this is not good.
Nope.
Because we're on the side of a highway. The car reeked of alcohol. Now, I knew for 100% certainty of everything that I was safe. I did not have it.
You were sober.
Yeah. I was sober. And I'm like, this is good. I can talk my way out of this.
Yeah.
Now, there's one of the guys in there that I was like, hey, dude, shut up. Don't say nothing, because he can talk himself into a jail real quick.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So I told him, shut the hell up. I got this. When the cop comes, he comes onto the side of the dude that I was afraid might talk us into the back of a car, and he starts running this trap. And at that point, I can't be like, dude, shut up. Like, I'm the driver. I'm sober.
Yeah.
I got this. So the cop comes up, and he's like, hey, is everything all right? And he's talking to those guys. I didn't get the opportunity to speak.
Yeah.
And they're like, yep, just going home. The cop hadn't seen me at this point because he didn't come on the driver's side, because that's the side of the highway. He's on the passenger side of the vehicle. Yeah. And he didn't lean down and flash his light and look at me at all. I was ready for that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm about to pass the shit out of this breathalyzer, and everybody's going to be on their way.
Yeah.
And then he says, no, and then he hears some rustling behind him. Now, behind him was the dude that was leaning against the tree taking a shit.
Yeah.
And I hear him, because I can't see him. I hear him go, hey, officer. At that point, the officer then flashes his flashlight down to the ground. I can see him pointing to the ground, to where he realized he was standing in piss. And then he goes, I don't have time for this. Gets in his car and peels off.
Yeah.
Now, I count to 3, and then I'm laughing at this point, because I'm like, because of what the officer said and then subsequently did after that. But at the same time, he didn't even look at me or acknowledge, you know what I'm saying?
Didn't acknowledge
like me
your
being in the car. Now, I left out some tidbits on purpose. I was the only black guy out of all those veterans. And the next day, as we were talking about this to some of our other coworkers, I had this thought that if it was one of our other coworkers' car who drove this pink flashy type car at the time, and everybody in there was a person of color, it wouldn't have mattered, in my opinion, that I was sober. I think I feel, and I hate saying the words feel.
Yeah, it's hard.
But I feel as though we would have gotten the third degree on everything that happened that night versus, I don't have time for this. And this guy hopping into his car, which it was two people in the car. So I don't know if the guy was a rookie or whatever. Yeah. But when it drove off, I did see that there were two people inside of the cop car.
Yeah. I mean, by all accounts, there's a guy defecating on the side of the road. I'm pretty sure you can get a ticket for that.
I don't know.
At the minimum.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? Like,
maybe. I don't know.
Don't get me wrong.
Like that.
If it was me in the car with them, I would have been like, "Thank God we didn't get a ticket or pulled over or nothing." Or you were already pulled over, but like not get a ticket or anything or a citation. But I mean, was that because you guys were white? You know what I mean? Like those guys were white doing that shit. Because I mean, let's be honest, they've taken drunk soldiers to jail on many other occasions. Mm-hmm. So I mean, there's just so many questions. It sucks.
Yeah,
it sucks. That's the position we find ourselves in, and that's really unfair.
Now, there's three big cases that people are talking about right now, or three big cases.
Technically,
four instances.
3 cases of black victims with white cops,
and we're talking about those today, not as a way to victimize people of color.
Yeah. And also at the same time not to demonize the police.
Correct.
We're looking at these situations purely to dissect what we're hearing, what we're seeing, and what's going on. Mm-hmm. You know, we have as many questions as the people who are listening to this podcast do. Mm-hmm. Because we clearly don't know. These people can say one thing and we don't know what they mean or if they believe what they're saying. Because I bet you every single one of them says they're not racist. But I mean, is that true? Do we really know those answers? You know, and that's not to say cops are evil. Like, we love police officers. Like, we believe in the law. You know what I mean? We've defended those laws. So I think the real question is what's going on, mm-hmm. You know?
Now, let's start. So currently there's a trial for Derrick Chauvin. And I hope that's
Chauvin, I think.
Chauvin. Okay. Yeah. And he is facing charges for manslaughter, second degree, and third degree murder for the death of George Floyd. Now, this happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Which, and I hate to even have this thought to where I laugh about saying this. There's a lot of instances coming out of Minnesota.
Don't know why.
Which would tell me to tell people that I know, hey, if for some reason you have to drive through Minnesota or land in Minnesota, skirt around that bitch.
Skirt around that shit. I just don't know.
But George Floyd died, it was May of 2020. And Derrick Chauvin was the officer that can be seen kneeling on this dude.
Yeah.
Right? Now, debate how you want to debate about the events that led up to that. But part of kind of what we want to talk about, too, is, you know, the respect that you give people. Right?
Yeah.
And as this guy was laying on George Floyd's back and neck and pleading, you know, and he's just sitting there, and at one point, a glimmer or glint, you can almost pause and say he had this smug kind of look on his face. How do you not get mad seeing that?
Yeah.
To where this guy wasn't given a chance to live.
Yeah. And then and this is where I find myself getting disappointed in people is they see this scenario and they blindly, because let's be honest here, they're being very blind. Um, Not saying you're being stupid. Don't take this as I'm insulting you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying you're choosing not to see something. And that's because you believe very deeply in the law. You want to believe deep down that it's not about race. I don't know what you're feeling. But if you see somebody kneeling on someone's neck and that person is pleading for their life, how do you justify that? And I mean, I've heard, oh, he was on drugs, oh, this, oh, that. And so I want to bring something up because this reminds what I'm seeing with this dehumanization of the victim. Because that's exactly and precisely what that is. They're trying to dehumanize him when they present these facts in these stories or on social media, or when people regurgitate what they see and they read. They say, oh, he was souped up on drugs. The drugs killed him. And I'm like, when we were deploying to Iraq in 2003, 2004, the military did something that took me a long time to unprogram.
Okay.
They tried to get us to see our enemies as less than human. They wanted us to not feel bad about what we were going to have to do.
Were the enemies a well-defined person or people, or was
Initially.
Okay.
So when the initial push into Iraq, into Baghdad, they were fighting the Iraqi army.
Okay.
But everything after that was insurgents, non-uniformed people, people in regular clothes. And it's really hard to identify who the enemy is when they all are dressed the same.
Mm-hmm.
But prior to all of this, they're trying to get you to not feel bad about what you're going to essentially have to do.
Gotcha.
Because you're going to be put in a situation where you have to make that choice of who lives and who dies. And I say that because it changed the way I viewed people.
Gotcha.
I'm not proud of this, but I was 19, 20 years old, and I'm being told that these are the people we will have to go and harm if they get in our way or they pull arms against us.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same thing that you see when a black guy gets shot. When a black person gets murdered or shot, maybe you don't consider it murder. That's fine. When a black person gets killed by a police officer, the first thing that the media does is say all these things this person was. And that's fine if that's what you want to believe and listen to. But they're dehumanizing the victim. So these people are worth less than other people? Like, is there an insurgency against them? Like, ooh, you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
This is what we do when it comes to war, and we're doing something very similar to our own people, because these people live here. These people aren't pulling arms against you and trying to take your homes. These people just want to live. Have they done some bad things in their lives? Maybe. But how much of that means you deserve to die? And how much of that does the police officer know in that moment to make that decision? Because everybody who's seeing this, oh, he was a drug addict, he did this, he did that. It's like, I'm sorry. You know this after the fact. Hindsight is 20/20.
Yes.
And you're making some really harsh decisions based off of a life of who knows why this person has done the things that they've done. And I'm not a fucking judge, jury, and executioner. Do I get to say who lives or dies? There are criminals out there who I'm like, that person should die. But ultimately, I don't get to make that call. I didn't go to law school. I'm not a judge. I'm not a police officer. But you're taking these people and you're trying to make them look like less than a human being who deserves a trial, who deserves to live long enough to account for their actions. Isn't that not the least we all deserve? You get where I'm coming from? Like, anybody deserves the right to defend themselves. Whether you agree with it or not, that's the law. That's what we're built on. And these people aren't getting the chance to do anything to prove that they're more than those photos you're sharing about them on social media. Because I could have done something 20 years ago and have changed and become a better person. If I died tomorrow, do I deserve to get dragged through the mud? Like why? I mean, we got young white boys who are going out there and assaulting people, and because they're a promising young male,
oh, don't get me started on that.
They get a slap on the wrist because we don't want to ruin their lives. For what was it? The father of that one rich dude said he shouldn't be punished for the rest of his life for 20 minutes worth of fun. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, that father deserves to go to prison for the enabling. You know what I mean? But I mean, if you can't look at a black person and say that they deserve the absolute right to defend themselves, and I don't mean like in a fist fight with the cop, I'm talking about in the court of public opinion, these people are being executed long after they're already dead. And that's not fair. Because these people are in everything that they are still people.
Let me play devil's advocate a bit.
Sure.
And I'm doing this for a reason. Before I ask my question, if you're listening to this on YouTube, I don't know the answer to this question. I'm going to ask Joe to see if he does. Do you know what the stats say or show about non-people of color police interactions, that they interact with people of color, and those that come out, how do I say this? Like good versus bad.
Yeah, good outcomes versus bad outcomes.
Do you know? I tell you what, I think that the stats would show, or that they don't necessarily that they're disproportionately bad for people of color versus non-people of color. I don't think that it would be close. But have you heard or seen anything that goes into those stats?
No, and I honestly, I don't know that. First off, they're taking into I don't know that there's anybody out there being a watchdog and taking into account all the positive outcomes, all the negative outcomes. And I don't know if I would believe it if I saw it anyways, because first off, everybody has an agenda. And I'm saying I would also believe it if it showed that the majority of outcomes between a white officer and a black a person was extraordinarily positive. I still wouldn't believe it. Because somebody's trying to prove a point with their graphs, with their statistics.
But the way that you say it makes it sound like there's no line that is
I'm sure there's
a morsel of the...
I'm sure someone... Well, see, that's the thing. I don't know that I trust anyone in this country enough to tell the absolute truth without agenda.
Okay.
I mean, the news is skewing everything on each side. They got the left thinking that one way's the right way. They got the right thinking the other way's the right way. I don't believe either side. I'm looking at this purely from a humanist fucking perspective. Like, these people are people. We can hate the things that people do, but average Joe Schmo guy who watches this and says, fuck that guy, he deserves to burn. You're not judge, jury, and executioner. You can feel that way, but ultimately you don't get to make that choice. But because it suits them and it makes them feel fine about it, they don't think twice about it, they don't lose sleep over it, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of people out there like that.
There's been other cases that, not similar, but the circumstances were kind of similar. And there hasn't been favorable outcomes that at the end, people have felt like justice was served. Now, Derrick Chauvin is one of 4 officers that are being charged around George Floyd. And with the charge of manslaughter, second-degree murder, and third-degree murder, with what you know about law and how you've seen other cases happen, how do you think the jury's going to favor with or against Chauvin on those 3 charges?
If I went off of prior what I've seen in the news from any outlet, I'm not talking about one over the other, because I don't want people over listening to us be like, oh, he's a liberal, or oh, he's a conservative. I'm not either of those things. But what I've seen in the news all the time is that the cop just either gets fired or nothing. Like, very few times I don't know the last time I've heard of a cop going to prison for what they've done to a person. I don't know that I've ever seen that. So do I think anything's going to happen to Chauvin? No. I don't have faith that that's going to happen. I think that they're afraid that this would open the door to cops being prosecuted for everything. And a lot of people would disagree with that. And I get where that could potentially be bad. But at the same time, too, they're not above the law. You get where I'm coming from?
Mm-hmm.
When we were service members, when I was deployed, yes, there were moments where we would have to make that call, right? But if it was a bad call, we would get punished. There's no question there.
No question whatsoever.
So why is this any different? And somebody might say, oh, we're not at war. That's not how the black people feel. They feel like it's a war against black people. Just because you don't feel it or agree with it, just because you never deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan, you support the troops, don't you? Right? The troops are just America's children. Why would you not support other Americans?
It's like you're reading my mind.
Yeah.
Because speaking of the troops.
Troops.
Back in December.
Yeah.
There was an Army officer in Virginia.
Yeah.
Got pulled over. Now, what I saw of this video was he's pulled over into a gas station.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a cop, and I can't tell if it's a gun or a taser initially, the first cop that you see in the video. And he's ordering this guy to comply with a lot of different commands.
Their tasers were yellow, so initially they had their guns drawn.
Okay.
You can see the difference in the color when he draws his taser later.
And I'm skipping a lot, but I'm going to link some of these videos and articles and stuff into the YouTube channel and on our podcast platform pages and things. Then I'm going to skip a lot. Now, there was a lot that happened in there that provides some really good context. And chime in if you feel like I missed something. Fast forward to this other cop comes, and you can tell he's a more seasoned officer, if you will.
Yeah.
And this guy comes in almost guns a-blazing.
Pretty much.
And the part that made me go, whoa, was this Army lieutenant. He tells the guy to put his hands out the car or something and open the door or whatnot. And the guy utters the words, "I'm afraid for my life," or "I'm afraid to do that." Something like that. And the guy has the audacity to me to say, "You should be."
Yeah. Isn't that scary? That's fucking frightening.
You should be. Now, when I heard that, I stopped the video because I got instantly angry.
Yeah.
Because how I translated that was, maybe police are taught to instill fear to get you to comply.
Not that I've ever heard of.
I don't know. I have not gone through police training. I have several family members and some really close friends that have been correctional officers, police officers, and sheriffs. It's not a job that I don't think that I would do for a lot of different reasons.
A lot of reasons, yeah.
I also, though, and this is kind of a side note, I believe in law. I also believe in equality of the law and equality in the application of punishment as well for breaking those laws.
Yeah.
And I mean, have I not gotten a ticket when I deserve one?
Yes.
I'll say yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was thankful for that. I just say thankful. It's like, hey, he definitely had the authority and the evidence
the right
to give me a ticket, and he, for whatever reason, he or she chose not to.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, but let's be honest; those are minor infractions.
Now,
you haven't done anything major that would be like, well.
Now, could you argue that this Army lieutenant was driving, and it's my understanding that he got pulled over because his license plates wasn't clear. It was a brand new vehicle or something like that. And in certain states, you have to have license on the front and the back.
Yeah. And I think Virginia is one of those places.
Yes, and so is Maryland. My car right now is not titled in this state,
right?
But I've gotten looks to where it's like I've driven past. I was like, wait, there's not one on the front. I've seen come behind, and they're tailing enough to, and I'm like, okay,
they're checking your tags, for sure.
And then they go on, what I'm saying, about the business. So this guy apparently, when he got lit, or lit is when the cops turn on their lights. He didn't immediately stop.
Nope.
He made the decision, and I don't blame him for it. He made the decision to continue driving until he got to a well-lit area.
I'm grateful he did.
That is the only thing from that point on that I agree with this guy's actions. Everything else that he did after that, if I was his counsel, if I was his homeboy, if I was with him that day, I would have advised him, don't do that. Because in my opinion, he did not start right. Now, I've thought this through well before that. His scenario, I've had in my mind. Yeah. Meaning, if I'm in Beaufunk nowhere, or there's no lights, where I'm at, and I just don't feel comfortable, I'm not going to keep driving and not do nothing. Now, I wished I hadn't saw this video, but there's this guy out there, Officer Tatum, Brandon Tatum. I don't know if he's a current officer or whatnot, but he has a pretty popular YouTube channel. And when things involving the officers and stuff come out, he typically he puts his spin on it. He chimes in, and he, I don't know if he self-identifies as somebody, and I even almost hate saying this because I don't identify left, right, whatever. Yeah. But I think I've heard him say that he falls more like on the right side of politics and things. Yeah. As a black guy, and it surprises people on some of his views.
I don't see why.
There was one thing that Officer Tatum said was like, if that guy was really fearful of, whatnot. Now, fear is a thing because you don't know what you're going to do when something immediately jumps off. Part of why I love the military is training. All of the training that you get. You train your ass off. Train. And the beauty of that training is that when things do pop off, you're essentially conditioning your body to react in a way that's favorable for you. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And favorable in a lot of ways, meaning you can make decisions that can keep you safe quick. And then you worry about all of the ancillary stuff later on. But Officer Tatum said something that made me go, yeah, I thought the same thing too initially was, I get put over. If I'm intending on doing that, why not? Why didn't he call 911 and announce what he was doing? You know what I'm saying? To kind of have that backup, if you will, to show to me to show better intentions. Because I'm going to step on the other side of the pillow here. Yeah, you're a cop. At that point, you don't necessarily know who this guy is, right? What's going on?
You don't know what could happen.
The only thing that you saw initially was this guy is just, you lit him up, he ain't stopping. Yeah. He doesn't look like he has the intention of stopping. until he finally gets to a location.
But the question is when somebody's trying to get away from you,
That's
and
true
when
too.
somebody's just continuing to drive, and then eventually they stop. Just because he didn't stop when you wanted him to doesn't mean he was resisting or
Fair
fleeing. Because I've driven to where there was a reasonable place to give the cop a position.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also been a time where I was pulled over in a place where I blocked an entire lane of traffic because I had nowhere else to go.
Yes.
But in that moment that I did that, was that the right thing to do? Absolutely not. I should have continued driving until there was an appropriate place to stop.
Side note, what is the rule for that?
That's the thing is they don't,
I don't know.
They don't teach us what the rule is. They just tell us a cop pulls you over, you pull over.
Yes.
But don't you want to also be courteous to the cop?
And be safe?
And be safe? Like, a well-lit area is not just safe for you, it's safe for the police officer too. Because the police officer can then see more of the details of the event. And people are going to say, oh, that's not what he was doing. And that's fine. If that's not what he was doing. He wasn't thinking about the cop. But he had other things on his mind, like staying alive. I mean, my thing is how many black people have to die by the hands of a police officer for you to say, okay, that's enough. 3,000, okay, that's fine. Now we can say there's a problem. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because I hate when this happens because I see it on social all the time. But a black person gets killed by a police officer for some reason or another. And I'm not saying this happens all the time. I'm saying we see it in the news a lot. There's always some counter article that gets shared about a white person getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, when I see people argue that there's not enough justice for this white person who gets killed, and that's their reason for not supporting the black person who gets killed, I'm like, that's kind of backwards.
Yes.
Both lives being taken are tragedies.
Mm-hmm.
Not one more than the other. Well, that one was a criminal. I'm like, but was he? You know what I mean? Like, was he a criminal? Like, you were being told he's a criminal. But this is just some dude who was pulled over by the cops. By the people who are sworn to protect you. To protect you. Not only you, though. Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's like their job. If a soldier went out and killed some random people, nobody would forgive him for that.
Correct.
We had a guy do that in Frederick just a week ago.
Yes.
He didn't kill anybody, thank God. He didn't kill anybody. But he just went out and shot two guys. And I'm sure he had his reasons, as fucked up as they were.
Wait. I might be wrong on that. I thought people did die.
Not that I heard. They were in the hospital. They didn't say that. I haven't seen any reports that they died.
Okay.
He died.
Yes.
He was killed by police.
Yes, and that this story that Joe's bringing up, this happened right down the street from me, and it was active duty Navy.
It was active duty Navy, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he was not a white guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't take him peacefully.
No, absolutely.
How many white gunmen have they taken in peacefully? Like, because people will argue that George Floyd was a criminal. That's why he deserved to die, apparently. What about these white gunmen then? Oh, but should we kill everybody? But isn't that the argument you just had a moment ago?
I would almost joke, or I've heard the joke being happen, is that if you're going to act one way, act that way for everybody.
Exactly. Exactly. That's my point.
Either you're showing humanity and respect to everybody, or you're taking everybody out.
Or just fuck all of them. Exactly. And I'm of the, like, because this is going to completely paint me in a bad light.
Ooh.
But I, like, all of those gunmen who went out and killed everybody, If they had been killed by the police when the police were trying to take them into custody, I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. I wouldn't blame the police because that person went and killed, and you saw them do it. There is video footage of them doing these things. These are very clearly the bad guys. If the cops killed them while trying to take them into custody, the soldier side of me says enemy combatant. Very clearly. And I'm going to bring up a story because this serves the purpose of what people say when they say, oh, he's a criminal or whatever, because you magically know his entire backstory even though you just saw him for a moment.
Okay.
I'm deployed downrange. I'm working a checkpoint, right? And I'm the last line of the checkpoint with a secondary vehicle further back for the oh shit just in case moments.
Gotcha.
Right? By the point where they come to me, they've already been through enough of the checkpoint that they should, in essence, be 100%.
Gotcha.
But they still have to stop, and they still have to, like, I can't remember what they had to do, but they had to stop and be let through. I had a guy in a pretty big truck, a truck large enough to carry a lot of explosives if they magically happen to somehow get it through, right? Don't know. You never know, right? And he's coming up on my checkpoint, and he keeps going. I get out of the way because I wasn't going to get hit by a car or truck, and my rifle starts to go up, and I'm yelling for him to stop. My rifle is going up. My finger is on the safety. I yell at him to stop. He gets to the point where now he is past me, and I've switched my rifle from safety to fire, and I give him one more moment. He finally stops. I do what I have to do to make sure he's good. My firearm goes back to safe. I didn't fire a round. He was good to go. In that moment, was I right or wrong? Knowing what I know now, I made a good call. If he had gone through and blown up somebody, I made a bad call. But there was no way for me to know in that moment. And I think about this moment a lot in my life. Because we go through life with a lot of secondhand knowledge, a lot of knowledge of things that the person in the circumstance did not have. And we make judgments based off of this extra knowledge without thinking about the moment, without all of that extra information. In that moment, I almost killed a man. And it haunts me. It haunts me. There's a lot of people out there who have had the responsibility to take a life. And I'm not going to say whether I was or wasn't one of those people. What I'm saying is, in this moment, with the ability to end someone, I am beyond grateful I didn't have to. Because it haunts me to even think that I almost did. Because I guarantee you, had I done what I've done, even though he technically broke the rules, and they found that he had nothing, I would have been crucified.
You might have been vilified. There's a higher probability that
you... Oh, wait. As service members downrange, there was a lot of things that went sideways back then. And even though it wasn't the service members' fault, they were crucified. It's happened because we are held to a higher standard, even in something as chaotic as war. For all my veteran friends out there who sit there and look at these scenarios and make these snap judgments based off of secondhand and far more knowledge than the person had in the moment, think back to those moments at war and think when faced with the enemy, the actual enemy, would you or could you have made those same judgments? You know what I mean? Like, and then extrapolate that. Like, think about what we're talking about for a moment. I'm trying to get you to not look at this black man or woman as an enemy combatant, but I'm comparing the scenario to a wartime thing, and it fits. And that's scary.
That story and what you just shared, you made up a point that I want to highlight, because what we haven't talked about yet was we didn't finish the current story about the Army lieutenant, as well as the other video that came out a day afterwards that showed a police interaction going wrong. Now, while I don't know the stats of some of this stuff, what I do know without a shadow of a doubt, just because of the sheer volume of people that are on this earth and just in our country alone, there are hundreds upon thousands upon millions of police interactions a day.
Yeah, easily.
You can't bring this subject up and not discount that part as well.
Yeah. The hundreds of thousands of positive interactions that don't end in tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
The statistic is very skewed. Like, we recognize that obviously more often than not, people are not dying at the hands of police officers.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, this isn't one of those things where we're like, all police officers are bad. We're not saying that.
And I'd even like to say that for as much as I would say that a regular civilian should be vigilant.
Yes, absolutely.
Cops should be vigilant as well.
Always.
They should be. Now, the Army lieutenant in Virginia that got pulled over in December that a lot of the public's just now starting to see.
Lieutenant Nazario,
It ended with him eventually getting maced, drug out the car.
Several times.
Pepper sprayed. And then you get through everything, and if you watch the whole video, at the end of it, the officers are having, in my opinion, a very civil conversation, a respectful conversation about how everything went down. I didn't see anything in that interaction that caused me to make me feel as though that police officer thought that he was superior in any way. That's how I viewed that conversation when he's not handcuffed. He's, in the back. Now, he did say something about how, he's like, look, I'm not, going to do X, Y, and Z, although I can, but if you want to make this a thing, I can. That part did kind of make me, it kind of put me off a bit, because it's kind of like, I do have the power, but
it sounds
you should be lucky.
It sounds like blackmail. Well, not blackmail, but it almost sounds like intimidation.
Yes. Now,
so I mean,
it could have been.
I mean,
but it was a very, to me, civil conversation. They both talked about, like, the older officer mentioned that he was a service member as well.
I don't know how much I believe that.
I can. Like, there are.
There's a lot of veterans who become police officers.
Yes.
And there's a lot of them who don't do what that guy did.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of shithead service members out there in uniform who do stupid things and deserve to be pulled over and probably have done something to be put in handcuffs and taken to jail. But that behavior didn't feel like he gave a shit about service members.
Now, the other event that happened in Arizona, New Mexico, some state, truck gets pulled over, cop gets out on the passenger side, having a very civil conversation,
doing all the right things
with a guy, and it ended tragic for that police officer. He notices that the guy has a gun, and he asked the guy very politely to step out, and something about coming over and trying to safely get this thing, and it looks like everything's gonna go hunky-dory.
And then it goes pear-shaped.
And then it goes, oh man, it goes so tragic that fast.
Super fast.
And the guy, the part that infuriated me. Not only did he quickly did what he did to take that officer's life, he then walks up to him, executes the guy, and gets back in his truck and
just drives off,
speeds off.
That makes me angry, man.
That makes me angry. And which is why I said earlier, and y'all can check the tape to rewind this, is both sides should be vigilant. Don't get me wrong.
Absolutely. Cops have a lot to be fearful of.
I will end my thought in saying that I'm not so sure he's as less relaxed.
Who?
The cop.
Oh, I don't think that he was relaxed. I think he was giving him...
Yeah.
Okay.
Man, I wish we had video.
That light bulb moment just happened. I see what you're talking about. Because I wasn't even and that's the crazy part. I wasn't even seeing it from that perspective. Because it's a white cop with a white driver.
Yes. Or it appears that he's white because
he could be Latin. I don't know. But no, it hadn't even occurred to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's crazy, right? Like, was he? See, and you don't want to have to think like that.
Right.
You don't want to have to think like that because this is a tragic event.
Yes, sir.
But let's play that game.
All right.
That very not black person took advantage of this cop not thinking he's a threat.
Mm-hmm.
So the cop did everything he was supposed to do. And that's how most police stops should go.
100% agree.
But obviously this was that moment where did he have something? Did he not have something? You know what I mean? But I mean, if you could see, there's so much argument for both sides of this.
Right.
Because the cops, they have to deal with this every single day.
Every single day, man.
But if that shit's getting to you, if that pressure is getting to you, speak to somebody. Is mental health an issue in this? Is that what's going on with our police officers? You know what I mean? Do they need help? Because I'd honestly argue with the amount of shit that they see, they could be dealing with some kind of post-traumatic stress.
Mm-hmm.
Why the fuck not? They see tragic shit happen all the time. Is this that kind of question? Is this a mental health thing? Should there, I mean, there's just so many questions with this. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want that cop to die, dude. That sucks, man. That's bullshit.
It was tragic.
And that cop was being a good cop.
He was the example of if you're getting a stop and seeing that, it's like, that is how
it's supposed to go down. For the cops'
should
perspective.
come out.
Yeah.
From the cops' perspective. Now,
and then people are going to say, but this is what happens when they're polite and they're nice. And,
yes.
But that's not necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
That cop could have came at him sideways. That guy was going to kill whichever cop pulled him over.
I agree. Mm-hmm. That
guy definitely had that intention from the very beginning. I mean, it's very clear by what he did.
Mm-hmm.
With the conviction he had.
I was thinking intentionality, but I don't even know if that's a word. Like, it seems very intent on this is what I'm doing. Because he got out regular. Yeah. And I'm kind of paraphrasing some of the things that happened. But as he's getting out, the cop, I don't know if he asked him to take the gun with him. I don't know. But I know the cop saw it and he asked him to step out. And it looked like it was for the intention of, let me make a safe space. But where he screwed up tactics wise is not, he didn't have a clear vision to see
what the guy was doing,
how the guy was preparing things. Now he quickly, because you saw him and he takes the gun, he makes a move, and I don't know if the safety was already off, but he takes a couple of actions and it's that quick though, and then he brings it from here to here and just starts shooting.
That sucks, man. It sucks. It sucks because I don't want to see police officers be targets.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy for everything that's gone down for people to target police officers. That's not fair. Police officers are not a problem. It is racism that's a problem.
Now,
that doesn't mean everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It just means the people who feel it. You know what I mean? Like,
now we're right at an hour, and we have one more event, one more story. So we'll get through this, but we won't get through the word of the day, and we'll just kind of
that's okay.
Wrap up our thoughts. Are you aware of the story of Dante Wright?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I am aware of the story just by a little bit. So can you enlighten me or share your thoughts as to what happened and why it's a big deal?
So and this is the tough part because I don't know what's true from what I've read.
Okay.
As I was presented, the story from what I read was this female police officer, I don't even know her name. She pulled him over. Apparently there was, he resisted.
Mm-hmm.
He did have warrants, and they did know that, or a warrant, or he had something that justified them pulling him over.
Correct.
At some point, he jumps back in the car. She yells, "Taser, taser, taser," pulls her service pistol, fires a shot. He drives off. She's seen saying, "Oh my God." I think she said, "Oh my God, I meant to taser him." And he dies a little bit further down the road.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to unpack in this because had she tasered him, this would be a completely different story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one with good resolution. He would have got arrested. He would have been able to stand for his charges, and he would have been able to deal with his warrant, and he would have lived, hopefully, a productive, healthy life afterwards. But it didn't go down like that. And this is where it's so complicated, and none of this is an excuse, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
None of this is an excuse. It's so complicated in unpacking it that technically she was justified in drawing her taser.
That
technically she was justified in drawing her pistol.
That I agree with you.
So it's so tough because I think they did a disservice to themselves by saying she accidentally drew her pistol when she meant to draw her taser.
Mm-hmm.
Because legally, technically, she had the right to draw a pistol because she didn't know if he was going to pull out a gun or what he was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that that is the wrong answer to do. But to say a 26-year veteran of the force didn't know which side of her body she was drawing her piece from, I think they failed themselves in that regard.
Now, I don't have to be a cop to understand this concept. You have a standard issue or standard gear or setup, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's designed that way
and they
to be repeatable.
And they explain this, too.
Mm-hmm.
They did a press conference where he explained what they do.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that.
And that's the thing about it that blows my mind. She's a 26-year veteran of the force.
Stop.
Yeah.
I want to jump in because when I initially heard the story and, surface level what happened, I assumed it was somebody fairly new.
Yeah.
When I found out it was somebody that was on the force for as long as she was.
And you see, it's funny. It's funny because now we're doing what I said people do.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
We have secondhand information and we're drawing conclusions based off of those things.
Yes.
Did we know she was a 26-year veteran when she said taser, taser, taser and pulled the wrong gun out?
Nope.
And how would we have judged her any differently? See, that's the beauty of this crazy madness that you have to unpack.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying we're right in regard. I'm not saying we're right in hating her. I'm not saying we hate her. I just mean in general. I'm not saying we're right by thinking a 26-year veteran of the force. Who knows what was going through her mind? She probably reacted instinctively because he jumped in the car. There's a lot of things he could have done. I'm not saying any of those things means he should die. This is a tough one. This is a really unfucking fortunate event. And it's sad because this kid doesn't get to tell his story. That sucks. That sucks. But at the same time, too, what if this was the New Mexico thing? And he jumped in the car and he came out with a gun. That's where people have to remember that that's what that looks like. That's probably why she reacted the way she did. And that is a very unfavorable stance to take on this. Nobody's going to agree with me on that. Some people will, but not everybody's going to agree with us on that.
Yep.
These are two very different circumstances. And honestly, that sucks. That event sucks. It shouldn't have gone down that way.
My understanding of police and kind of what they go through on a day-to-day is you'll have like a roll call. Now, this is me having a conversation with somebody who was a cop, who's in my family. Depending on your area and what your rank and a lot of other different stuff is, you'll have a roll call. You'll be given an assignment. And depending on the level of activity that's been going on, you will have an understanding or you'll kind of get intel on, how the streets are moving that day. Okay, if you follow me. And it's very similar.
Like a sit rep.
Yes, exactly like a sit rep. Now, I can't say how infantry and people on the ground were given, but as aviators, we had those before every mission where we understood the threats of the area that we were going to. So I bring that up to say, if you hear enough that you're going into a certain area where certain things tend to happen, you're a little bit more vigilant about how you operate in that area. And in that respect, I can understand a bit about how cops' lives are day to day when they're, putting on the uniform. Like I said, I'm not anti-cop. I'm not anti, whatever. I follow along the line of like good is good and bad is bad.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. When you see bad, it's bad.
Yes. Yeah. And having, the cops go through their training and getting their briefs and things like that, because I'm not living that life, I don't know what they have to deal with on the day,
I'm sure it's
day in and day out.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a lot. Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't for a second believe I could do what a police officer does, because I remember what deployment was like, and that was enough to really fuck with me for a long time. And that was only 1 year. You know what I mean? Well, it was like 14 months or something like that. But it was 1 year of my life, and it still haunts me. Can you imagine living that life every single day where you just don't know? Do they eventually start seeing other people as combatants or possible enemies? Like you get where I'm coming from? Like, let's look at it from the police officer's perspective for a second. They have to feel like there's targets on their backs, especially with the way the media portrays them. Like, just because, and I mean, then we see like what happened in New York when those two cops were sitting in their squad car and they get assassinated.
Yep.
Like,
there was a instance that happened yesterday that was very similar to that same situation, where the appearance of this was down in DC actually, that it was just somebody targeting a cop
just because he was a cop. That's insane. See what I mean? Like, and it's shit like that that gives the people who don't want to look at these people dying as people or as victims. It's these other people who fuck it up and make it look like a cop can't trust anybody. There's millions of law-abiding citizens in this country, lots of them, on every side of the fucking fence. In every shade of color. I would like to think. And I don't like many people or things. Like, I don't believe in the goodness of others. But I do like to think that most people just want to live.
Yep, bro.
They just want to live a life and have fun and do good things, and not necessarily do good things, but to do stuff. You know what I mean? They're not out there to fuck with you or kill you or hurt you. Most people are normal, kind, fun-loving people. Like, that's the hard part. Because when you're a cop, you don't attract those people. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You're not being... So I imagine they feel like targets more than most people do. That takes a toll, man. And people keep talking about training. I don't think training is the issue. I think they need support. And they need to stop feeling like the American people are turning against them. That's hard. Because you have one community of people who feel like they're targets of all of this. And that's probably true. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
Look at the way the New Mexico cop treated that driver compared to the way Chauvin treated George Floyd.
Yes.
And maybe if they would have, like, I didn't see all the video of George Floyd. I don't know. I'm coming at this with secondhand information. Mm-hmm. But what I have seen is him kneeling on his neck. And I have heard him say he could not breathe. Without any secondary information. Just seeing that. Oh, he was resisting arrest. Oh, he was on drugs. Fine. You're telling me there's not a less life-threatening way to take care of that? Mm-hmm. Like a taser? Oh, he's all souped up. Put him in a squad car. Let him beat the shit out of the squad car. Don't leave him out in the open to potentially hurt someone else or another police officer. All I saw was you kneeling on his neck and squeezing the life out of his lungs. That's what I saw. Mm-hmm. If I did that to an enemy combatant, I'd go to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. The trial would be a joke.
I would like to see a justice system that was truly fair and equitable to all parties. Unfortunately, because we're humans, that'll never happen.
It's just never going to be the case.
That'll never happen.
And it's not about what country we're in. I think, if anything, in a lot of ways, we're one of the more fair countries. I would mm-hmm. like to think so. I'd like to hope so.
Yeah.
But it does feel a little skewed. It really does. I'm not even a black person to feel that way. Like, I just want to see people treated equally.
I've got an idea.
Or fairly. Mm-hmm. Which is the easier one to attain?
Ooh, people that are listening, comment and let us know what you think.
Which one is easier to attain? Fairness or equality?
Or equality. Ooh. That's a good one to ponder, man. And that's a good way to end this podcast. Yeah. Let's end on a ponder, if you will. If you've made it this far, comment.
Thanks for tuning in.
And let us know, thanks for tuning in. Joe and I, we have these conversations all the time. And we have two people that have grown up very differently, two people that have strong opinions on the things that we think about. But where we stand really at the same is that at the end of the day, I just want to live, man.
Yeah. I think that's enough.
I just want to live my life.
I will say this. I want you to think about how much you support the troops, right? Like, I would think almost everybody in this country supports the troops, right? Mm-hmm. I think that goes without saying because they put their lives on the line to protect our country. The next time you see a cop, buy him a fucking coffee, man. Because this guy's doing the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And his own people villainize him. The media does it. Other law does it. These people are people too. They're your sons and your daughters and your parents. You know what I mean? Let's give our law a fair shake.
Yes. Yeah. next to people that work in a hospital, I think cops are one of those professions, or law enforcement, are one of those professions that typically, when you're interacting with people, it's not a good time.
Yeah.
And I say that with healthcare workers because typically when you're in a hospital, you're not there all hunky dory.
It's not always a good thing. Yeah.
You know, which is why like
we
doctors,
don't hate doctors
nurses,
when we have an illness.
and healthcare workers. You know, I think that now this is a separate conversation, but they have stress that other jobs and other people just don't deal with because they're seeing the bad side of things for the most part.
The hard part.
Law enforcement, because they're out on the street, I feel as though and I said I feel again. I was going to try to get through and only have that one I feel, and I'll bring that up sometime later. I did, but the words I feel. Anyway, but I think that they're one of those jobs that they typically interact with people on their worst times. Yeah. Or not so cheery times. And you'll catch guys that at Starbucks or whatnot, smiling and they're showing up, and there's a great majority of those that kind of like when you and I, because I've heard you say this, you wore the uniform with honor.
Yeah.
These guys are wearing their uniform and badges with honor because the
vast majority.
They have a lot of authority and things that the regular person doesn't have, as far as like
the kind
authority.
Of stress.
Yes,
the kind of stress that comes with that responsibility. Mm-hmm. It's different. It's very different.
Yep.
And it's hard. You know what I mean? I can't even imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So
we'll end on that, Joe. And this has been episode 7 of Just Joking Podcast. Let us know what you thought. Reach out to us. Because we're not that big of a podcast now, we see the comments.
Yeah.
And thanks for tuning in.